Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. In this video, I'm going to be sharing some tips on how to create a great resume that is going to help you in getting remote work. These tips are going to be helpful regardless of if you're a student or a professional, so do make sure to stick to the very end of this video. And this video is also a part of the web development bootcamp that I'm trying to create. So if you're new to the channel and you're not aware about the bootcamp and you're interested in learning web development, then the link to that playlist would be in the description below. You can go check out the roadmap that I've created and understand what this entire bootcamp is all about. This video is also a continuation of the front end playlist that I'm creating that you can see in front of your screen. And in this video, I will not just be sharing the tips about how to build a great resume, but you would also be coding your own resume, which is only fitting if you're aspiring to become a web developer. So in case you haven't checked out my last video, which was this one, plan, code, and clone any website better using CSS grids, and you don't know what CSS grids or you still struggle with it, then do make sure to check out the last video, even if you're not interested in the previous videos explaining basic HTML. And without any further ado, let's just dive deep into it. The first very important thing about any resume is the layout in which it is structured. Now, the objective of a resume is to showcase your skills and experiences to any recruiter who is looking for candidates to hire. The structure of the resume is very important simply because you want to fit in the maximum information possible in order for the recruiters to see what you have to offer. Now, one of the rookie mistakes that a lot of people make is that instead of having a single page resume, they have multiple pages in the resume, which is wrong. The first thing that you need to understand in order to know why it wouldn't work is knowing how the hiring happens. So what happens is that whenever a company rolls out any job positions that are there, and I'm not talking about big corporations or MNCs who already have bots in place that filter out resumes. I'm talking about companies that are offering remote work, and most of the companies that are offering remote work, they don't have these big team sizes and they don't have these bots built to filter out resumes. So what happens is that whenever a company posts a job, they receive a lot of applications, probably hundreds and thousands of applications that they're receiving at once. And it's the job of the HR to look at each and every resume to filter out good candidates based on the job description that is provided to them for that particular role. And once they filter out these candidates, they then forward it to the team in order to for them to pick the candidates that they want to interview. So imagine yourself being the HR, right? Now let's say you are the HR in some company and they posted a job with some job description, and as an HR you received probably 400 500 applications, right? Now your job is to filter out some good resumes, some good candidates out of that bulk of 400 and 500 candidates, and then forward it to the team so that they can choose the candidates that they want to interview. Right. Now, if you were in a similar position where you had 400, 500 resumes in front of you, then would you be, spending a good amount of time on each and every resume that is there? No, right? You probably, on an average spend about 5 to 10 seconds on a resume, just quickly, looking at the overview of it. Okay, what's the experience that this person has? What are the skills that this person has? And if let's say something interests you that okay, this person worked at this company or did this thing, then you're probably going to read a couple of points that are written below it and you're going to move forward after deciding if you want to shortlist this candidate or not for forwarding it to the team. That is one of the main reasons why the structure of your resume is very important. So in front of me, I have a wireframe. Wireframe is again something that we talked in the last video. I have a wireframe of a good resume in front of me that is going to help you in getting remote jobs, right? And now let's just break this resume down, right? So the first section that I have, the very first section that I have, again, I mean, if you're a student or a professional, the first two, three sections are still going to apply to you, right? So the first section that I have is an introduction, right? So the first line, the very first line that I should have on any resume is my own name, right? What is my name as a candidate, right? Now the next comes some links about me, right? Some things that, you know, would help them, check out my social profiles and check out the work that I've done and things like that, right? So I have my email. I'll have my email because in case they want to reach out to me via email, then it is necessary, right? I can have my GitHub account. This is very important because you're applying for a software developer position, right? So you need to have your GitHub account there that will show the repositories, the work that you have done, how active you are on GitHub and things like that, right? The next thing is your portfolio. So in my case, I usually have my YouTube account there because I haven't created a portfolio website separately. But in your case, it should be your portfolio, right? If you're not a YouTuber or something, so you should have your portfolio with relevant links and things like that. Now again, a lot of people ask me, Apoorv, how can we create good portfolios? What should we include in your portfolios? So again, I mean, we are going to build our own portfolio in this front end bootcamp. So this front end playlist. So don't worry about that. If you're a beginner, if you don't have a portfolio and want to build one for yourself, then we are going to do all of that. But this is something that should include, your portfolio link, your YouTube link, something like that, right? That showcases, the work that you've been doing. And you can have your LinkedIn account. Again, I mean, since this is resume is something that is used for professional things, then LinkedIn is a platform for professionals, although the posts there are not professional anymore. But anyway, in any case, you should have your LinkedIn account there. The next comes your Twitter account. Now again, you want to showcase the recruiter that you have a social presence. Again, I mean, this is something that a lot of people say, that they get a lot of remote jobs or remote work through Twitter these days, right? More often than LinkedIn even, right? So tech Twitter in short, right? So being on Twitter is very important in today's time because you're aware about what other people are doing. You're aware about you're better at networking. You're going to attend some Twitter spaces. You're going to engage with other people. Like their posts, like their tweets, comments on them. Right? Other people are going to engage with you. Gradually, you're going to build your network. So having a presence on Twitter is very important, and you can include your Twitter accounts here. Uh, Blogging is very important in today's times. I mean, blogging simply shows that you're passionate about something, you're passionate about learning, you're passionate about sharing your knowledge and things like that. It shows you that it basically shows anyone that you basically are aspiring to improve and you're willing to share, right? Which is very important because open source in today's time is very important, especially in getting remote work. So blogs is something you should have your own, blogging account anywhere, dev.to, Hashnode, whatever is the platform. You should write some blogs and you should include the links here, right? So whatever your links that showcase who you are, right? Your email, your GitHub, your portfolio, LinkedIn, Twitter, blogs, all these things. So you need all of these things in your resume. That kind of concludes the introduction section that is there, right? Next comes the skills, right? So a lot of people mix up the skills or they mention their hard skills separately and their soft skills separately. You just need to mention your skills and categorize them into five different things, right? Categorize them into languages. What languages do you know? Do you know Python? Do you know JavaScript? Do you know C++? Do you know C sharp? Do you know Java? Whatever it is, right? Do you know Golang? Whatever languages categorize them into languages. Categorize them into libraries and frameworks. What libraries and frameworks do you usually use? Do you use React.js? Do you use Next.js, Node.js, Flask, Django, whatever it is, right? So categorize them into that. Then you can categorize them into tools. What tools you're comfortable using? You're comfortable using Git. Let's say Git is a tool. Apart from Git, you can mention tools like Jira. Let's say comfortable using Jira and its storyboards and things like that. You're comfortable using Notion, which is a documentation tool again, right? So the tools that you're comfortable in using. Tools again, I mean, in tools, Docker is a tool. So if let's say you're a DevOps person, then you can mention all the DevOps tools that you use for your service meshes, Docker, Kubernetes, things like that. So you can mention all of those tools that you're proficient with. Then platforms, what platforms are you usually comfortable with? Are you comfortable with, let's say, AWS? Are you comfortable with, uh, you know, Azure? Are you comfortable with Google Cloud Platform? Are you comfortable with Heroku? Whatever platforms do you use for your deploying your applications, Netlify, things like that, right? And then you can mention the databases that you're comfortable with. I'm comfortable with MySQL, I'm comfortable with Firebase, MongoDB, PostgreSQL, SQLite, whatever it is, right? So simply, categorizing the skills into five different things: the languages, libraries, and or frameworks, tools, platforms, databases. Any recruiter, just by looking at the skills, would get a clear understanding about what I'm all about, right? What do I have to offer on the table, right? And then after that, you can have an education section, although I prefer not to mention it since I'm a college dropout, right? So I don't have anything per se to mention for my education. But you can have an education section. You can have an education section not right after skills, but at the bottom as well. If let's say you're an experienced person, if you're a student, then as a student, having education on the top makes more sense because you're a student. But if you're a professional, then instead of education, you can have experience there and education below that, right? So that is there. Again, when we talk about education, then I just have a simple title called education, and then moving into my education. So for in my case, I've done high school from St. George's School. I passed out, I did my high school from 2015 to 2017, right? So I mentioned the years. I split it into two, the columns, right? And then I have points about it, right? Some points about it, some bullet points about it. So I pursued science, scored 80% in my CBSE, blah blah blah. Whatever you did in your education, maybe you participated in some groups that are there in college. Maybe you organize some hackathons, some events in your college, stuff like that. So whatever you did while doing that education, I pursued BTech, scored this much CGPA. That should be your first point, what you pursued and how much you scored, right? And the follow-up points could be, the things that you did as a student there, right? You organized some hackathons, you know, did some other stuff, you helped other students organize stuff and all that stuff. Then comes experience, right? So again, if you're an experienced person, then try to keep the experience right below skills and move the education below. You can choose not to mention the education at all if you're not proud of your college or something, or you didn't get a good CGPA. In that case, you can just completely cut out education, don't mention it anywhere. So you can have a section for experience. Again, for experience, you can mention, what was your designation. So again, if you look at the resume here, then you would notice that here in this entire thing, uh, I mentioned my name, but I didn't mention my designation. I didn't mention anything like I'm a software engineer or a software architect or something like that, right? So don't mention any designations there. Mention your designations in your experience, right? So when you talk about experience, you can mention things like, okay, I worked at let's say Google, and I was a SDE2 there, software development engineer 1 or 2, whatever it is, right? And you can mention the time from when to when did you, similar to education. The structure would more or less, the layout would more or less remain similar to how I mentioned my education. And then some points about it, right? What technologies you worked on, and what were some of the measurable results that you know achieved. And we'll discuss what these points should be, right? If let's say you're a professional and you have lots of experience, then feel free to cut out the education section and just mention all the experience that you have. If you're a student, then mention your education. If you have any sort of internship experiences, mention them in the experience section. You can mention any projects that you worked on, any projects that are there, any projects. Maybe it was a project uh, uh, in some hackathon or something, whatever you built out of passion. Maybe you built something of your own, right? Whatever it is, mention the projects that are there. If you have any sort of open source experience per se, right, you contributed into open source or something like that, mention that. Have a separate section for open source. Say that I contributed into this community, I contributed into this project, I contributed into this product, whatever it is, right? So mention things about open source, right? And these are like the titles that I'm talking about. So again, first I had my introduction, my name, and then my links. Then I had skills and categorized into five. Then I had the education section with all my education. Then you'll have the experience section. You can have the experience section. If you're not experienced, then skip it. Mention some projects, project section, open source section, right? Community work, if let's say you're involved in some communities, maybe you contributed into some community, you built your own community, whatever you did, right? Community work, you can mention that here. uh, some others things as well, so you can mention in others, you can mention any hackathons that you participated in, any ambassador programs that you were a part of. Mention your experiences as an ambassador, what I did as an ambassador. I let's say organized this as an ambassador. I did this as an ambassador. I did this in my college as an ambassador. Whatever you did, right? So any hackathons that you participate in, any ambassador programs that you participate in, right? Mention them in your resume, right? Any community work that you do, that goes a long way in your resume, right? Any open source things that you do, that again is something that you should mention in your resume. Projects, any projects that you work on should be mentioned in your resume. And that all of these things are more applicable for someone who doesn't have any sort of experience, right? If you're an experienced developer who is wanting to make a switch into remote work, you're tired of your office job or something, then feel free to utilize that experience section and add all the experiences, right? Now coming, this was all about the structure that we talked about, the structure of how your resume should be, right? Now let's talk about some of the key things that you should keep in mind while building a resume. So the first thing is that for work experiences, or not just for work experiences, for anything out of these things, right? For education, for work experiences, for projects, for open source, for community work, for others, other things like ambassador programs, hackathons, whatever you participated in, right? What you should keep in mind is that there shouldn't be more than 2 or 3 points, right? So 2 points, maximum three, right? You shouldn't just have 1 point, right? You should at least have 2 points, and max to max three, right? Don't go beyond three, right? And if let's say in case you're having 3 points for whatever you're doing, the first thing that should be mentioned is the technologies that you worked on, right? What did you work on? Let's say I was a senior backend engineer in Avior, which was a fintech startup in Australia, right? So I worked on Flask, I worked on Python, I worked on React.js, I worked on Docker, worked on AWS. So all of these things I would mention in the technologies that I worked on, right? So the technology should be mentioned. The second thing that should be mentioned are some job oriented skills, right? Hard skills, soft skills, whatever it is, some job oriented skills. So managed a group of people if you're an experienced person, or it could be implemented, the CI/CD pipeline of this, right? Or wrote some unit or integration tests, functional tests, whatever it is, wrote the test suite of the application, tested the entire application, automated some stuff, some job oriented skills. What did you actually do in that job, right? So these should be mentioned in a point, and then some measurable result for your work. This is very important, right? So some measurable result of your work. If let's say you're a student and you participated in some hackathon and you came third in it, right? So mention the number of students that in total participated in that hackathon. Mention that, okay, about 200 or 250 teams participated in it, each comprising of 3 or 4 students, and out of that I got third position, right? That is the impact of your work experience, of your open source. If let's say you created a project, an open source project of your own, then mention the stars that are there, how many people have started, how many folks are there for your project, uh, and things like that. These are all your measurables, right? If let's say I'm talking about projects here, the projects that I built, a measurable for those projects could be how many people used that project that you built, or you know uh, if let's say how how many people contributed into that project, if it was open source or something, right? So have some measurables, right? If let's say you're doing some community work, then what was the impact of your community work, how many people were there in the community or stuff like that, so all these things, there should be some measurables, some things that can measure your work, right? If let's say you have some work experience and you can, you know mention things like, I scaled this application to, these many users, to 10,000 users every day, or 50,000 users monthly, or stuff like that. All of these things, I built this infrastructure that could hold this many, things. I load balanced, or, you know stress tested the servers, or stuff like that. So all of these things, these are the things that should be mentioned in your resume. And Apart from that, it should include links, right? So all of the things that we talked about, for your GitHub, for your YouTuber portfolio, for your LinkedIn, for your Twitter, for your blogs, links should be mentioned, right? These should be links, right? And if let's say we are talking about experiences, then maybe mentioning the link of the company that you work for, maybe their company's landing page or something, you can add a link to that. If you worked on some projects, then GitHub link to those projects, right? If you're working on open source, then links to your open source. Maybe you created a PR, a pull request into some project, so there should be a link to that PR, you know so that any recruiter can click on that link and see what you did in that pull request, stuff like that. Links to the communities, right? The communities that you worked on, or whatever you did, there should be links to that. If there are some other achievements like ambassador programs or hackathons, links to those landing pages or stuff like that. As many links as you can include, try to include these links, right? And try to use words like, you know like these, like, I led something, I led a team of five other students, five other developers. I implemented this particular feature, I implemented the test cases of some platform or something like that. I designed the infrastructure of the website, or whatever it is, web application, mobile application, whatever it is. Words that showcase some sort of initiatives, that you have taken initiatives while doing it, right? So this initiation words, these should be there in your resume. These are very important, right? And again, I mean, as I mentioned at the beginning as well, and gave you the reason as well, keep them one page at max, right? No need to have them more than one page. And use bullet points while you know creating your resume. So having 2 to 3 bullet points is more than enough. These things are there that you can have in your bullet points. The technologies that you worked on, some job oriented skills, hard or soft, you managed something, you organized something, whatever it is, or you implemented, CI/CD pipeline, stress tested the servers, mm, you know, did the load balancing of your architecture, or whatever it is, some measurable result of your work. Like, I scaled this product to these many users. I built this open source project with, these many stars and pull requests and folks, things like that, right? So all of these things help you in creating a good resume that is going to attract any recruiter that is there. Now if you're a student and you're worried about how I'm going to acquire all of these things, then you can start with some things right now. You can start writing blogs, right? You can start looking for hackathons to participate in. You can start looking for some ambassador programs that actually have some perks for students as well. You can participate in things like GSOC and stuff like that, which you can definitely mention in your resume. Any programs that you participate in, you can start with open source. And if you feel that you're not skilled enough for open source yet, then don't worry. I mean, this playlist is for that. So eventually, as we start having more and more videos, you'll feel more and more skilled, and maybe there would be one day where you look at a particular issue and you say that, okay, this is something that I can solve, and you'd go about solving it. But it's not just about coding. I mean, even if you're doing open source, you can have some other sort of contributions as well, like helping the team with some documentation stuff, filling some, fixing some spelling mistakes or stuff like that. All of this, makes you feel the community and be a part of it, right? So you can start with all of these things already. Start having a presence on social medias like Twitter, post regularly on LinkedIn, start doing all of these things. Start, you know, filling up all that information, whatever information that you want to fill in your resume. Start, plan it out, what things I want to include in my resume, and work accordingly, right? Participate in hackathons and all that stuff, GSOC and all these programs. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it on the tips I wanted to share on how to build a great resume. And again, I mean, since we also talked about this being a part of the front end bootcamp, now it's time to code our resume, right? So I have created a basic, template that is there. So this is the basic template that I have created. Again, I mean, I'm following the same wireframe that I discussed with you guys. This is the wireframe that I'm following with my introduction, my skills, my education. So if you look at it, then I mean, I have my name on the top, then I have my email, GitHub, and I just wrote email and GitHub and portfolio or YouTube, but these should be links, actual links, right? So email, GitHub, portfolio, LinkedIn, Twitter, blogs, right? And you can see that this is one column with taking the entire width, and then I have about six columns here taking one third of the width each, right, spanning two rows, right. Then I have my skills, the second section, so I created a horizontal rule between, and then I have this title of skills, right. And in skills I categorize them into five different things: languages, libraries or frameworks, tools, platforms, databases, right. So languages, again, I'm skilled in Python, JavaScript, Bash, TypeScript, HTML, CSS, some other languages as well, but I'm not confident in mentioning them in my resume, or I don't like working with them. So better not to mention them, because this is the languages that I want to work with, right? And then I have some libraries and frameworks that I'm proficient with, some tools that I know: Docker, Kubernetes, CI/CD. I know tools to facilitate, continuous integration and continuous deployment. I'm good with Jira, Notion, Git, right? And then platforms that I'm comfortable with, databases that I would like to work with, right? My education, then similarly, I could have added my experiences with 3 points and stuff like that, right? And once you create this entire thing, all you need to do is you need to press Control and P, right? You just need to print it, right? So as you can see, I mean, all the web page that I created can be printed in the form of a resume, right? I can save it as PDF. I can, print all the pages. I can make sure that it just has one page, right? I want it in portrait, and in more settings I can remove any sort of extra, margins that are there. So in your case it might be set to default, so set it to none to remove the extra margins that it adds, right. And paper size is again A4 in our case, and background graphics are not there, it's just plain white background with black text on it, right. And if you look at the code of it, then you can see that I used again CSS grids while building it. So this is my grid 1, right. And in case of grade 1, you can see the styles as well. So I added some margin on the left and the right. And I there is this CSS property called line height, which can be used to, increase or decrease the space between two lines. So I set it to 0 pixel because the default line height was making it very elongated. I didn't want that. Um, then for grade 1, you can see that I had this template, this column template repeat 3 times. So in actual it is creating 3 columns in a single row. But then I have my name, my ID name here, which I've set to 1 by 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So it takes the space from 1 to 4, right? The entire width. And below that, I have my regular divs for, these things. I have a special class created called align right. And this class, simply aligns everything to right. So there's a CSS property called text align, which aligns everything to right. And this is an incomplete resume. I mean, I just built it for the sake of this. But your assignment for this particular video is going to be creating your own resume, right? And I don't care if it is incomplete. I don't care if you have enough, information to fill into it or not. It can be incomplete, it can be empty, right? But because I mean, I understand as students, you currently might not be having any experience, you might not have any projects, you might not have any accomplishments in terms of hackathons, in terms of being a part of some ambassador programs or participating into GSOC or stuff like that. So I understand all of that stuff, and that is something that you should start doing and should start exploring as you acquire more and more skills while watching these videos. But still, I mean, I would like to create, like you to create the layout of your resume and code it yourself, right? Include your links, your skills, your education, at least, right? And move ahead with that, right? Again, I mean, the link to the assignment to understand, how to submit it and things like that would be in the description, not in the description, but as the pinned comment below. So do make sure to check that out. I guess with that being said, that's pretty much it for this video. I hope you are going to build great resumes, and this resume, I mean, this is something that I myself, these are the tips that I myself used to have my own resume as well. And these are some of the common tips. I mean, if you look at, a lot of other people who crack, FANG interviews and stuff like that, they have very similar resumes. So there's a reason for that. There's a reason why, all the good resumes are similar, and it's because you want the recruiter to have a clear picture about you and not spend much time in trying to go through your resume. A lot of people create two columns in in their resumes. Don't do that. Keep it linear, right? One after the other and stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it for this video. I hope you are going to come up with some good resumes. If you're worried about building your portfolios as well, then that's something that we are going to cover later on in this playlist itself. And yeah, hope you got to learn something. If you learned something, then do make sure to write some tweets about it. Use the hashtag learning with Apoorv. I'll quickly type that as well for your reference. So use this hashtag, tag me in those tweets as well. And Yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. And in the next video of this playlist, we are going to be talking about Bootstrap. We are going to start exploring Bootstrap 5 and how grids work in Bootstrap 5. So our entire process of creating wireframes and layouts using grids is going to become even more easier and responsive after we start using Bootstrap. So do make sure to stay tuned for that video, and I'll see you in the next one. Till then, peace.